Hi, welcome to the Taste of the New South Wales Forum webinar. So our host today will be myself. I'm the New South Wales chapter lead for the RBMS. We've also got Brad and Jess helping in the background. This is our amazing committee over to the side there. So first of all, I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge I'm hosting this webinar from the land of the Wadi people who are part of the Dharawal Nation. I also acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you all reside today and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating in this webinar. I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and I respect the continuing deep spiritual connection that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have to country and their unique ability to care for country. So who's RBMS? We're a diverse community of practice in Australia, and we're a dedicated group of people who are really keen to talk and network and discuss new and innovative techniques for managing our rivers and catchments. So I'll just tell you a little bit about the New South Wales Forum. At the start of the year, we had a forum in Armidale, and we had about 60 participants attend. And the whole aim of that forum was to get practitioners, researchers, and the community together to talk about rivers in northern New South Wales. So it was a really successful event. And so we thought, why not bring the rest of Australia the opportunity to hear from 3 of our amazing speakers? So I'd like to thank the organising committee of that event, as well as our sponsors, which were Two Rod Consulting, University of New England, Northern Tablelands Local Land Services, and New South Wales Deepwater Fisheries. So today we have our guest speakers will be Louise from University of New England, Jenny Wingo from Local Land Services, and Rebecca Mabbott from Macquarie University. So first of all, I will pass over to Louise, who will talk to you about the reproductive and conservation ecology of the Bell's turtle. Over to you, Louise.
Hi, everyone. Oops. Hang on, I've just lost my presentation. I'll try again. Can you all see that? Is that working? Yep.
Yeah, we're good to go. Thanks, Louise.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. As Rhiannon said, my name is Louise Streeting. I'm a PhD student at the University of New England. And my research project is on the reproductive and conservation ecology of the endangered Bell's turtle. So despite decades of conservation efforts, turtle populations are still declining worldwide. Of the 356 turtle species, 61% are threatened or have recently become extinct. It's widely recognised that turtles are particularly vulnerable to predation during early life stages, which includes when they're eggs in the nest and small juveniles and hatchlings. Nest depredation is particularly bad when predators are invasive and the turtle species have not co-evolved with that predator. This is a beautiful big female Bell's turtle. Bell's turtles are primarily aquatic. They do not migrate over land, so they're not the turtle that you see crossing the road. They're not the more common eastern long-necked turtle. Bell's turtles are endemic to the high altitude western flowing rivers of the New England tablelands. They're a long-lived species. We know they live for at least 40 years, but we suspect that they live quite a lot longer, possibly beyond 100 years of age. The females grow bigger than the males. This big female, her shell length is about 30 centimetres and she weighs about 3 kilos. Bell's turtles are a late maturing species and the females don't start laying eggs until they're 20 years of age. And once they're mature, the female will lay a single clutch of up to 30 eggs in the riverbank, and they'll lay a single clutch of eggs each breeding season, and those eggs have to stay in the riverbank for up to 90 days. Whilst we still have a lot of adult Bell's turtles in our waterways, the population is ageing and there's very little to no juvenile recruitment, which makes the population vulnerable to a sudden crash in the near future. And unfortunately, in some areas, we think that juvenile recruitment has all but stopped, with juveniles making up less than 1% of some of those populations. Over the last 3 breeding seasons, I've found that more than 95% of Bell's turtle nests are raided by foxes. And often this is within 24 to 48 hours of the eggs being laid. This slide shows a fox sniffing around a Bell's turtle nesting bank, and it also shows a raided Bell's turtle nest. You can see the fox has dug the eggs out of the ground and the shell fragments are scattered around. And if you look really closely, there is a fox scat inside that nest chamber. This time-lapse footage taken at one of my study sites shows a fox raiding 3 Bell's turtle nests in the one night. There are some camera traps set up there and they're actually looking at protected nests, but this fox has come in and raided another 3 nests before I could find them, before I knew they were there. Unfortunately, I've also found that foxes are taking female turtles when they come up onto the riverbank to nest. I've found Bell's turtle carcasses scattered around active fox dens. So my project is looking at the reproductive ecology of Bell's turtles and evaluating conservation strategies that aim to protect against fox predation or bypass fox predation, and also aiming to increase the number of juveniles in the populations in the wild. There have been no published studies on the nesting ecology of Bell's turtles, and up until the start of my research project, there had been no Bell's turtle nests, live turtle nests reported. So my project's looking at in situ nest protection and ex situ rearing of hatchlings to aid in the recovery of this turtle species. This time-lapse footage, again at one of my study sites, shows female Bell's turtles coming up onto the riverbank to nest during an afternoon storm in November. You can see at one stage there's 4 females nesting on the bank at the one time, and if you look closely you can also see other turtles and little turtle noses in the river, so other turtles scoping out that nesting bank. Oh, I'll just show you there, that's a still photo just pointing out those 4 females nesting all together. So the first conservation strategy I'm looking at is protecting nests in the wild. So I cover the nests with wire mesh or a steel cage if there is stock in the area. I just peg the wire into the ground and that wire stays on top of the nest for the next 80 to 90 days. Finding nests can be really difficult. Sometimes you can see turtle tracks coming up out of the river and up the bank. And sometimes you can see a turtle-shaped imprint in a substrate, which indicates that a turtle female has nested there. These signs they're not always there, and sometimes they don't last very long. I'll just show you there. There's the tracks, and there's that imprint. So because these tracks and traces are hard to find or non-existent, I'm working with camera traps to try and locate nests, but I'm also working with a detection dog team from Canines for Wildlife who have specifically trained 2 detection dogs to find specifically Bell's turtle nests. This is Max and Bunya. They're English Springer Spaniels, and they are just fantastic. In the first season, they had a really hard time finding nests because they had no material to work with, but they're just going ahead in leaps and bounds now and getting really good at finding Bell's turtle nests for us, and they seem to really enjoy it. And when they find a nest, they're rewarded with by their trainers with a ball game, and they love it. This is the typical nesting habitat that Bell's turtles seem to prefer. It's bare and exposed. It's got little to no overhead vegetation or shade. It's quite often a cattle access way where cattle get down to access the river. The soil types vary from sandy loam or rocky gravel to hard setting clay soils. And I have found though that hatching success is highest in sandy loam soil. This is another photo of one of my nesting banks. It's a panoramic photo, so the photo is taken from the water's edge looking up the bank. You can see that I've got camera traps set up there. They're all looking at protected nests. I protected 14 nests on this bank last season. The photo was taken late in the season as hatchlings were starting to emerge from the nests. So I've got a pitfall trap and a drift fence set up there so I can intercept hatchlings and mark them before they go back into the river. Although turtles, the Bell's turtles will nest all over the bank, they tend to nest more frequently at the base of a step in the bank. This footage shows a fox trying to get into one of my protected nests. She spends 20 minutes here before she finally gives up and moves on. So as I said, this mesh is only pegged into the ground, but so far it has prevented any predation of any of the protected nests. You can see she's having a good go at it there. This is actually that same nest later on in the season, and over on the left-hand side you can see wild Bell's turtle hatchlings emerging from their underground nest. So after they've incubated in the bank for 90 days, they dig their way out. They're only the size of a 10 or a 20 cent piece, so they have no trouble getting out from under that nest and scrambling down the bank to the river. So here's a quick summary of my nest protection results so far. Over 3 seasons, I've been surveying a 2-kilometre stretch of river, and I've found 134 nests. 50% of had fox and chamber near the nest. I've only been able to find 7 nests in total that made it through to hatching successfully without any protection. And then I've protected 50 live nests, and from those live nests I know that 700 hatchlings have made it back into the rivers. So I now have 3 seasons of data on timing and location of nesting, incubation duration, nest chamber temperature and humidity. Something that was dramatically different over those 3 seasons is hatching success. In the first season, the average temperature in the nest was 25 degrees and hatching success was 90%. However, in the second season, the temperature in the nest chamber went up 3 degrees. The average was closer to 29 degrees and hatching success dropped to less than 70%. So that season, a lot of hatchlings perished and I think they couldn't get out of the nest because the soil was so hard and dry, they just couldn't dig their way out. And I also found that with some of the hatchlings, their yolk sac had actually, it looked as though it had cooked. Then we had last season, 2019-2020, which began in drought. And with the lower river levels, the turtles still nested within about 6 metres of the riverbank. And then when we did have rain in January, all of the nests that I protected were inundated by river water. And the hatching success, I'm still analysing the results, but it looks like it's dropped to less than 50% for last season. I did move a nest that was in the path of impending floodwater. I moved it 2 metres up the bank, up to the top of the bank actually, just to try and give it a chance of survival. And it wasn't inundated, but for a short period of time, and all of the eggs in that nest hatched successfully, so that was good. So the second strategy I'm looking at is the rearing of hatchlings in the laboratory. So over 2 seasons, I've used oxytocin to induce 29 wild-caught females to lay eggs, and I've incubated those eggs across 3 temperatures, 27, 28 and 29 degrees. And I've released 400 hatchlings that were reared in the laboratory. I found that eggs incubated at higher temperatures have a shorter incubation period, and eggs incubated at 27 had a higher hatching success. So in the second season, I incubated all eggs at 27 degrees and got a 97% hatching success rate. 2 hatchlings that were released in the first season were found again 300 days later. This is one of those hatchlings. On the left, you can see how big the hatchling was upon release. And then on the right of the screen, you can see how much it's grown 300 days later, and it basically doubled in size and weight. I have retained 50 hatchlings and I've kept them for 12 months to get them to a larger, more predator-resistant size. The plan was to fit them with radio trackers so that I could track movement, growth, survival and habitat use. But unfortunately, due to COVID restrictions on fieldwork, I had to let them go in March without any trackers. I will be doing intensive juvenile surveys starting in spring. So I'm hoping to recapture some of those 12-month-olds and then fit them with trackers. So I'm evaluating the effectiveness of these two conservation strategies and looking at the survival rates of the hatchlings from the lab and from protected nests. And I'm cautiously anticipating an increase in the number of juveniles in the wild populations over coming seasons. So for this freshwater turtle species, it's pretty obvious that current fox control measures are inadequate, and without conservation intervention, this species will likely become extinct. So some of my research findings are already being implemented. This spring, a team of ecologists, landowners and Aboriginal rangers will be locating and protecting wild Bell's turtle nests, and there will be a hatchling release program starting this season, which will be aiming to hatch and release 1,000 hatchlings each season. And this coming season, I'll be looking at adult Bell's turtle movement and habitat use using acoustic tags and underwater hydrophones, and I'll be using similar methods to those used by Mariana Michelli-Campbell et al. 2017. I'll also be working with ecologists Bruce Chessman, Phil Spark and Darren Fielder to revise the growth model and longevity estimate for Bell's turtles. Analysis for this will be done using the carapace length of recaptured animals. Current estimates for this species are based on a reasonably small sample size, but the revised analysis will be done using more than 500 recaptures now, which spans 21 years. So in any conservation program, it's important to inform and involve the community, and the hatchling release programs have been an awesome opportunity to involve local school kids. So far, kids from Bendemeer, Katingal and Kingstown schools have been able to release hatchlings in their local rivers, and along the way they've learnt about the importance of looking after our river environment and about looking after our animal species. So my program is, my research project is funded by New South Wales Environmental Trust and is coordinated by Local Land Services in collaboration with the University of New England. I'm really excited about my project, and it's really good to know that some of my research is actually being used to help guide conservation actions for this endangered turtle species. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Louise. We've just got a question here, and I forgot to mention early on that if you'd like to ask a question, please type it in the Q&A section and I will read it out. The questions that aren't read out, we'll ask the presenters to respond, and we'll send that at the end of the webinar throughout the week. So we've got a question here from Ewan Belson. You mentioned conservation intervention. Given a major threat is fox predation, what would you have in mind on a landscape scale for conservation intervention? How would you measure its success?
Well, my measure of success is to see juveniles in the population. So actually see an increase in the number of juveniles in the population. Fox control is a tricky one. It seems that as you take foxes out, more foxes come in from somewhere else, and foxes pass along the knowledge on how to find Bell's turtle nests, it seems. And yeah, basically, if you see an increase in the number of juveniles and those juveniles are making it through to reproducing, then there's success. So by actually bypassing that threat in the first place, the foxes, I think we're giving the turtle a fair chance of making it through to maturing and reproducing.
Thanks, Lou. We've also got one more question from Alice Chapman. She said, the turtles are so cute and thanks for the hard work. My question is, have you found frost control in the areas around your nest to impact turtle hatchling success?
I haven't been involved in controlling the number of foxes. I know that local land services do have fox control initiatives underway. However, there is another PhD student at the University of New England who is working on the impact of fox control. But basically, with Bell's turtles, I think the amount of predation is just going to wipe this turtle out before, if we don't do something about it. Fox control is not adequate at the moment. Yeah, so unless something drastic happens with fox control, this turtle will go extinct before. Yeah, we can't really wait.
Okay, thanks Lou and Alice for that question. We've got one here from Fergus Hancock. You mentioned bare riverbanks without overhanging vegetation. Densely vegetated banks are preferred biohabitat. What do we know of in-channel habitat needs for this species and remediation efforts to provide them?
It's a tricky one because usually as environmentalists, we're pushing for vegetated banks. We want vegetation to hold banks together and keep them from washing away. So this tricky turtle decides it likes bare areas. However, I think we don't have to have a completely bare area for this turtle. This turtle just requires small cleared areas. Yeah, so vegetation is fine, just a few bare spots, sandy banks and things seem to go well for the turtle. So if we can just stop fox predation, I think that we can get away with nicely vegetated rivers and streams. Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Lou.
Sorry, I was just going to say with cattle, so there is an initiative by local land services to try and get people to temporarily fence off river nesting areas. So we don't want people to keep cattle out of those areas all the time. We just want them to fence the areas off during nesting seasons. So then the cattle does keep the vegetation down a little bit and the turtle will come in and nest.
Thanks for that, Lou. So if your question doesn't get answered, we'll look to answer it afterwards. So now we'll move over to Jenny, and she's going to talk about a project from the Hunter Estuary.